Matt Johnson.
Sorry, was that Matt Johnson just joined?
Yes.
How are you doing? This is James Hills with PCS Director, Print Audit. Okay. I am going to start us off here. Can everybody see the? I just shared out my screen. Hopefully everybody can see. If somebody cannot see, could you speak up?
This is Matt. I'm having some trouble getting on the go-to meeting.
Are ya? Is there anybody else having difficulties?
I'm the lucky one. Okay, I'm restarting my computer.
Yeah, I'm afraid there's not much I can do from my end. If everybody, it may be a problem on your end, so give it a try. Now, just a couple of housekeeping notes here. I'm going to keep you an hour, and we will throw open some time for questions at the end there. But this is audience participation, so I'm going to be asking you guys for your input as we go along here, because really what I want to do most of all is present to you today as if you were a customer of yours, right? So the approach that we're taking here is to show the value of rules-based printing to the customer. Now, I will also show, just as a reminder, what this is going to mean to you guys as far as a revenue generator for your organization. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you wouldn't mind, is if everybody could mute their phones, and rather than me muting you, because then if you've got any questions or you're doing the audience participation, you won't be able to chime in unless I unlock you. So if you could mute your phone so that we don't enjoy your whole music if you have to step away or something like that. Now, you can see the front screen here. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch over to what we call our machines in field review. Now, I know a lot of you have seen this already, but like I said, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to present this to you as if you were a customer. So everything I am going to be talking here is like I will be talking to your customer base. However, with the one difference is that there are, if you look at the bottom of the screen there, you'll see dealer results and customer results. We are going to go through the dealer results as well initially, but the talk track is almost identical. The other thing is that this isn't something you guys are going to have to learn today, right? This is
Hey, Jay?
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're still getting a lot of background noise. I'm just wondering if we're not getting some of the noise like we got yesterday.
Yeah. Once again, could we have everybody mute their phones?
Okay, I think we're all right now.
I noticed the difference then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something might be. I believe I've got a bunch of my guys listening in. Excuse me, just one moment, please. Could you shut the door out there? Okay. Let's carry on then, and if we have to, I'll mute everybody, but I don't want to if we don't have to. So, this machine's in field review here. It's a very simple thing in its structure and everything, but it's not so simple to do smoothly and present smoothly. The transitions between the sections are very important from a sales perspective, so that you're getting the full impact of these numbers for your customer. So, and all you need to do is you just need to enter information into the blue fields. So let's just say that we have an appointment with a customer of yours called ABC Company. Oops. My goodness. There we go. I got to get my fingers on the right keys. And let's put icon in there. Now, as you can see, what we're looking for firstly is the total number of pages that this particular customer is doing in a month. So this includes all of their copy, all of their print, any output that they've got. Now, we've got 500,000 pages in there at the moment. Now, when we did this yesterday, what we're asking for is what do you see as your average size customer? The guys yesterday thought that might be a bit big for doing 500,000. What do you guys typically see? How many pages a month would you like us to start with on this? We went with 250 yesterday. Are you guys okay with that? Or somebody come in with something else?
Speak up, somebody.
Yeah, it's audience participation. I'll sit here all day and listen to you guys not participating.
Hey, Ray Jordan, what kind of a number should we put in total pages? And by the way, guys, let me just point out that what you're going to see today, and I know you've all seen this form before, may have even played with it some, but James is going to be presenting this today to us as if we were the customer. So a lot of the terms he uses, or talk track, I guess is a better word, you should jot down, because these are the kinds of things that you can use to better understand and present this to the customer in a way that might be more effective. So, Ray, you're on the call. If you can unmute, give us a number.
Can you hear me, Steve?
I can. Thank you.
Okay. We're talking about total pages per month. That's what we want to put in?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go with 850,000.
850.
Yeah.
All right. So, and just to support Steve's comments there, two things. Number one is that I am recording this. So we'll send it out and make it available to you, so you guys can refresh anytime you like. The other thing, and more importantly, is that I have a team of salespeople who are absolute professionals in presenting and positioning this. So they are your support. So I would strongly encourage you to engage them. They'll be in contact with you to introduce themselves if they haven't already, and they will be your product expert, if you like, to present this solution to your customers and really teach you guys through repetition and through role practice and things like that. We will help train you in whatever way you like on this. So 850,000 sheets of paper that they are doing an output as per month. Now, in this particular environment, let's just say you are in where you're approaching this, you're going to have a bunch of devices in there that you're being paid on already, right? Multifunctionals. The average, what we need to come to here is the unmanaged. So unmanaged is defined as anything you guys are not being paid for is an unmanaged page. So if you're in this average customer again, what we're looking for is how much of that volume are you typically getting at the moment. I'll guide you on it a little bit. What I typically see is with Icon Ricoh is about 30% of that total volume is going to your devices. Do you think that's too low, too high, right on the button?
I think 30% sounds just about right. Somewhere between 30 and 40.
Well, okay, let's go 35 then. So 850,000. That means 65% of it is unmanaged. So that's 552,500. 52,500. That is currently you are not being paid for at the moment. So the next thing we need to look at here is the percentage of that 850 that is being done in color. We've got 25 in here at the moment. Does that sound low, high, right on?
I think 25 is good.
All right. Next thing we need to look at here, and guys, if you notice here, that when we're talking to your customer, we're getting them giving us the numbers, right? And you're going to be on hand as well to help guide them with those numbers. But the key is to get their buy-in on these numbers, because the more you're getting that yes train going on these numbers, the more they're going to buy into that return on investment that we're going to come out with at the end. So if you got a customer who's doing that 850,000, how much are you charging them on average for a black and white? We got 1.5 here. A bit high, maybe?
I think it's less than a penny. So,
so 009?
Yeah.
Okay. What about color? Got 8 cents in there at the moment.
That's a good question. Color on our MFP is not 8 cents a copy, I don't believe. I think it's going to be more around the range of, I don't know, a penny or more. Somebody else can correct me if they know better.
So, does anybody want to come up with a number? I mean, I typically, we were at 885 yesterday for the guys that were online.
Yeah, 08's good. That's a good number.
Okay. All right. Let's now. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at if they are printing anywhere else. We need to come up with some sort of a blended rate, right, of how much they're paying for those ink jets, laser jets, and whatever else they've got in there, right? So we've got a 4 cents a page in there. Are you comfortable with that, or is that a bit high, bit low? For a black and white, that is, of course.
No, that's good.
Okay.
High.
Sorry?
It's a little high, like 035, 032.
Let's go through. I want to be as conservative as we can here, and this is what really gets the customer biting. Okay. Color, man, it can be 12.5. I've heard, you can pay 25 cents a page for some of those devices, right? All right.
That's true, but I like 12. That's typically what I've heard.
All right. We'll keep it there then. So, in other words, if they are printing on your devices, or the way to position that to the customer is if you are printing on the low-cost devices, you're paying 2.7 cents. If you're printing anywhere else, you're paying 5.5 cents. So obviously there is a big cost difference in moving that volume, right? So first thing we're going to look at here now is what effect the incorporating rules-based print strategy is going to have for this customer. So the first rule that we're going to put in place is a job size rule. So we're going to say if a job is larger than X many pages, we want it being sent down the hall, right? So typically, we got case studies that show that you can move up to like 85% of your volumes by doing that unmanaged volume, right? So because that's what we're focusing on here. This is the target, right? That 552. That's the number where we're attacking. So we're going to start moving that volume. We should be able to move about 30% of that volume standing on our heads by incorporating a rules-based a job size rule. So if we can do that, we're going to move around about 165,000 pages away from those high-cost devices and put them onto your devices, right? That means, because you're charging them the 2.7 cents here, you're going to be putting another just under $4,500 in revenue into your pockets each month. That's 53 grand a year. Now, if we take that same, if we now attack the color side of things and put in a rule that restricts the use of color, again, we should be able to move 30% of it standing on our head. So because what we're talking about here is we're only talking about that 25% of that unmanaged volume, right? So we're talking 29,000 pages that we're going to be able to move from a color perspective, based on a color rule, to your machine. So that's another $2,300 a month putting into your revenue stream. So in this case, by incorporating two simple rules, we're actually putting over $80,000 into your revenue from this one customer. Now, I say 30% is really conservative, right? It's, like I said, we've got case studies that's showing 85%, right? So what if we could do better than that? What kind of impact would that have? So if we can move 40%, 50%, dare say, what if we could do, I mean, the numbers get big, right? And all of that additional revenue actually means more savings for the customer as well. Because the only people suffering in this relationship is those competitive devices. So let's take a look at this from the customer's point of view, because the customer really couldn't care less whether or not you're making more money off of them. In fact, they don't want to know, right? Or you don't want them to know. So what we've done is we've switched over to the customer results tab at the bottom there, and we've brought all of those same numbers from the previous sheet over to this one. So we've got that migrated volume of 30%. Now the difference here is that when we're calculating is the difference between the low blended and the high blended, right? So if we can move that 30% on the job size rule, that's going to save that customer $4,700 a month. By moving that volume. That's $56,000 a year. That one rule will pay for this in no time. So that same rule for the color, again, we're talking about much lower volumes because of the 25% thing there. So we're saving another $1,300 a month for that customer based on that other simple rule. Now, let's say we put another rule in place, and this rule is focused on the duplex capabilities. One of the really cool rules on this, I believe, is that you can put in place a rule for based on the application. If you are printing from, say, Outlook or Explorer, or there's a number of different applications that if you're printing from there, there's no reason why you can't just print it duplex, because if you're printing off your email, you're just probably taking it into the bathroom to read, right? So by incorporating a duplex rule based on the application, because we should be able to, again, duplex about 20% of that volume. That means that we are not actually saving the customer any money from moving it from high cost to low cost. What we're doing is we're saving them the cost of that extra sheet of paper, right? So we can estimate that at around another $500 a month that the customer is going to be able to save. Now, let's take a look at the attrition. The attrition is a very interesting one because it's not actually a rule. The attrition is the natural outcome of people knowing that you can see what they're doing. So when you install this software into the environment, you're typically going to be doing it in its assessor version, right? So it's going to run in that customer's environment in complete stealth mode. Nobody knows it's there. It's going to run for 90 days, right? Or anytime, any interval up to 90 days. And you're going to then have a benchmark from which to measure the effectiveness of the strategy that you put in place. So let's just say you run it for 30 days in this environment in stealth mode, right? At the end of the 30 days, you then go loud and proud with it, and you turn on put a couple of rules in place and let everybody know, hey, by the way, we can see what you're doing. You will see that overnight that all of that waste and abuse kind of printing that takes place is going to more or less end, right? Because you can hold people accountable for what they're doing. And so, you know, those little piles of unclaimed jobs that sit on the printers at the end of each day, they tend to disappear. So by doing that, what we typically see is about a 10% reduction in the overall amount of printing that the customer is doing. Now, that doesn't sound like particularly good news to you, right? Because obviously, if the customer is printing less, you're earning less. But keep in mind here that this savings or this reduction in printing is coming at the expense of the competitive devices. It's not coming at the expense of your devices. So we can show that, that's one thing, right? The other thing that is to be mentioned about attrition savings, this is the right thing to do for the customer, right? Because if you're not talking to your customers in terms of, how do we reduce your spend, then the competition is going to, right? It's a talk track that is very attractive these days. But by doing that attrition, you're going to be able to save, again, this customer is going to save $46,000 a year by reducing their overall print. So we're talking about, by introducing 3 rules and letting people know that they are being tracked, $117,000. That's a pretty good savings, Mr. Customer, isn't it? Now, there are literally 8 million or so rules that you can put in place here. If you can conceive a rule, you can put it in place. So if I wanted to say, for example, I want to put a rule that says if Steve prints a job that is more than 10 pages to this particular device from this application on a Thursday afternoon between 4 and 5 o'clock, I want him to send that down the hall and duplex it. You can be that specific. And the good thing about that is that as you develop this strategy of rules for your customer, what they're going to do is, as they get used to things, you're going to have to change things and modify the rules and make them more specific, because they don't want necessarily to treat everybody the same. The CEO perhaps doesn't want any rules on him, right? Or he wants a different kind of rules. So that there is the flexibility in there to be able to account for all of that. Now, so that's the cost savings part of it. Let's, Mr. Customer, take a look at now what the side benefit of saving all that money is going to be for you, which is from the environmental perspective. Because what we're talking about here, if we look at just this duplex savings rule and the attrition savings, what we're actually talking about there is reducing how much paper you're using in your environment. Obviously, if you're using less paper, you are chopping down less trees to support your habit. We can quantify that because all of the numbers are here. So by doing those 2 things there, you are going to save about 170,000 pages per month. That's 2 million sheets of paper a year. A sheet of paper is about 0.011 pounds, so we can tell how many pounds of paper you are not using. 22,000. I mean, what is that? It's over 10 tons of paper, isn't it? Now, the EPA tells us that your average pulp tree that's harvested will yield around about 8,300 sheets of paper. So we can quantify this and say, look, if you adopt this rules-based print strategy, not only are you going to save $117,000 this year, you are going to save 20 trees a month, 245 trees in this following year. That's a decent stand of trees, right? Now, the EPA also tells us that that same tree will eat around about 45 pounds of CO2 emissions in a year. So we can quantify what that CO2 offset is. Now, this number doesn't mean much to me because I have no idea what a pound of CO2 looks like. But I can relate, and your customers will relate better to, say, driving 45,000, 46,000 miles in their car, or, how many burgers can you flip with 916 propane tanks? That's a lot of barbecues, right? So quantifying this stuff is extremely important as a side benefit to the cost savings, because a lot of companies they get funded partly by the CO2 offset that they can come up with, right? They're all major corporations have green initiatives. So this goes towards meeting their targets, and it comes, when you talk green to people, typically 2 things come up pretty quickly. Number 1 is that it's not cheap to go green, right? Green technologies are not cheap. Number 2 is the change that is required in order to go green, right? Because you can't expect to get different results if you're doing the same thing, right? You have to change what your habits are. This technology handles both of those things extremely well. From a cost perspective, well, it's got its own ROI, right? But from a change management perspective, as you'll see in a few minutes here when we show you the workflow of rules-based printing, it's simply a pop-up when somebody breaks a rule, educating them on what their print habits are and shows them a better way of doing things. So you can take a very softly approach and get their buy-in because of all the flexibility in the messaging of that. And we'll show you what that looks like in a few moments here. Now, so that's the environmental side of things. So we've had our savings, we've had our environmental impact. Now let's take a look at the other capability of the software, which is the recovery side of things. This is a very well-established method or a methodology for a lot of verticals, like your architects, your engineers, realtors, law firms, marketing companies, construction companies are doing it. There's a lot of verticals out there who are charging back to their customers for the printing that they are doing on their behalf. So it is worth introducing at least the idea to your customers, simply because you don't know whether or not they're going to go, well, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe we can. Right now, if you're if this would be a pretty sizable law firm, but a law firm, if you had one that wanted to engage in this, they are typically charging back around about 80% of their total output, right? And they are charging in the region of 20 cents to 25 cents a page. Well, obviously, that puts a real different spin on the return on investment when you can put $1.6 million into their pockets, right? That will open their eyes if they're not doing this, or if they're doing this in an antiquated fashion or with old technology. Now, if they're not a law firm, though, let's just say they're that construction company, and the construction company says, well, there's no way I'd ever be able to charge back more than about 20% of my total output, and there's no way I can charge 20 cents a page. I might be able to get, my money back and, and charge maybe 5 cents. Oops, that's 50.05. There we go. Even 20% of their volume at 5 cents a page is still $100,000. It's significant. So my point is that it is you can't guess on what verticals are going to be interested in this chargeback. Pitch it out there, and you'll be surprised how many people go, maybe. But let's just say that this customer does not have the ability to charge back. Okay, so we'll zero that out. Let's just focus on that rules-based printing. So let's take a look now at what that return on investment is going to be for you, Mr. Customer. So what we're doing is we're bringing that $117,000 down here. With this particular customer, we're probably talking about 1,000 seats of the software. All right, 1,000 employees. Are you guys cool with 1,000 employees for that size customer? I'm going to take that as a tacit approval of yes. Hang on a second. I'm going to look up the price for a rules. For 1,000 seats of rules is retail of $21,100. So what we're looking at for this customer, of course, then is within just over 2 months, you are going to be able to show them their return on investment. Now, just to give you guys a little perspective on this, because this is a fair-sized customer, right? Yesterday, I'm going to scroll up to the top here. Yesterday, we used 250,000 as the total pages, and the unmanaged pages were, I think, 175,000 of that, right? Because that was a 30% that you're getting at the moment. When we did that, the return on investment was just over 3 months. So regardless of the size of the opportunity, the return on investment is typically very attractive. And again, what we've done here is we've used numbers that the customer is completely buying in on, right? Now, and we've tried to be very conservative with our 30%, our 20%, and our 10% there. It's quite possible that they're going to see quite a larger percentage of the effect of the rules, right? How much volumes we're moving around. So, depending on your salesperson, what you will find is that all my guys have a different style and everything, of course, as you all do. We have an accompanying presentation or slideshow for this. So I'm just going to take you through that, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'm just going to show you how we position things with the customer. Some of my guys do this first and then the spreadsheet. Some of my guys do the spreadsheet first. I'm getting a little feedback. I'm not sure who that is. So what we're going to do, I'll take you through it quickly here. So what we'll do is we'll give the customer just a quick orientation on print management, show them a few facts. The one I focus on here mostly is that $150,000 to fill up your car's gas tank with inkjet ink. That's an awful lot of money, right? It's a very expensive liquid. Now, when you install the software, what you're going to have when you do that assessment is you're going to have an awful lot of information about what's going on in that customer's environment, because we capture 35 pieces of information about every single print job being done in that organization, regardless of where they send it, because we will capture all of the local printing, all of the network printing, and even any direct-to-IP printing that happens to be going on. And the kind of information, as you can see here, it's the who, what, where, when, how many pages, how many copies, was it black and white or color, was it duplexed, all of that sort of information. And puts that into a database so that you guys can then use that information to start extracting intelligence out of that and determining, okay, what is going to be the best approach to this? Because what you guys, from what Steve was saying, one of your handiest tools for doing this at the moment is those little USB keys that you plug in, all right? Those are great. I've got absolutely nothing but love for those things because they are fantastic door openers, right? Within 30 seconds, you know more about your customer's environment than they do. Now, the trouble with them is that although it sparks interest, there's a lot of gaps in that information, right? Because it doesn't capture any of the locally connected devices. The devices have to be on when you do a scan. If they're in sleep mode, you might not capture them. It doesn't see behind things like fiery devices or jet direct boxes and things like that. So there's a number of gaps. And the biggest gap, of course, is that it doesn't add the user into the equation. So when those questions get raised by your customers about those little USB keys, that's opening the door for a perfect opportunity for you to be saying to them, you know what, you're right. This is not an accurate, complete picture of your environment. What we really need to do is understand exactly what's going on here so that we can make recommendations that are going to make sense to us both. And that's when you go and install the assessor, because that is adding the workflow into the equation, right? What users are doing what. And that's where your rules come from. And you'll get some good experience. I know you've had some training from Joe Riddle on our professional services team. He's always going to be available to you, as is my team. We've all got good experience in this. So when you do an assessment of your customer's environment and they say to you, you know what, this is really cool, I love that ROI, let's get on with it, let's do it, all you need to do is they need to buy it, of course, and you'll get a new license key from us, and all you need to do is input that new license key into that environment, and it turns that assessment license into a perpetual one.
James.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Steve. We can hardly hear you. There's some static on the line. There's a lot of background talk.
I'm going to mute you all then.
Okay.
Okay. It's a bit disconcerting for me now because it's utterly silent. But so Now, so that's how I would position that, right? So you don't have to reinstall, and you are simply just putting in a new license, and it's picking up where it left off. Now, when it comes to deciding what kind of rules, and remember we were talking about that 30%. Right, and saying we should be able to, standing on our head, move that 30%. Well, let's give you a little bit of an idea on how that might be possible and how that is actually really quite conservative. Because if we this is very typical. If you take a look at this particular environment, you'll see here that there are in the time frame there was 6,200 jobs printed, right, or done. Now we can see, based on the breakdown here, that 82% of them were between 1 and 3 pages. But when we take a look at the total number of pages printed in that same time frame, we can see that those 1 to 3 page jobs only accounted for just under 23% of the total volume. So in other words, these larger jobs are accounting for an awful lot of the volume, right? And that's what's important. So those are this green, red, and yellow are the targets, right? That's where we're going to get that movement. So we should be able to, again, easily move a good portion of that. Now, like I said, there's 8 million different rules that you can put in place, right? An unlimited sort of choice. So what we're going to do is this is where we spend a bit of time with your customer on explaining how this all works, because this really does present the idea of rules-based printing rather well. So you've got Jennifer sitting at her desk here. Now she has access to, in this case, 3 machines. She's got a little inkjet sitting on her desk. She's also got she's sharing a laser jet with somebody else, and there's that big multifunctional down the hall. Now, what we're going to do first with Jennifer, we are going to put a job size rule on her. So if she's going to print a job that is between 1 and 3 pages, well, you know what? Those convenience printers are a good place for that to happen, because we don't, do you want her getting out of her chair and walking down the hall, or fighting the political battle of having to take that piece of equipment away from her, right? It's that is not necessarily effective, because you annoy people, and they are useful for a certain type of printing. If she goes to print something that is between 3 and 10 pages, you perhaps could use a soft rule, right? Make it a suggestion. We call this the feather or the hammer approach. The feather says, you know what, this job is too big for this particular device. If you send it down the hall, we're going to save some money. Do you want to go ahead? Right? So she has a yes or no decision to make. If she says, yes, I do want to continue printing all the time, well, it's all being tracked, so you can see when she's breaking the rules. So if she's continually being a bad person, you can change the rule and make it a hard rule. Or if she's printing more than 10 pages, any sort of variation on this, you can dictate how people are doing it. Thou shalt send it down the hall, because it's going to cost almost $5 if you print it here. All right? Putting some, as you notice there, we put the prices in there, so we can determine how much this job is going to cost by printing it to this location, right? And thus make them aware of what their spend is. Now, what you'll find is that people learn very quickly what the rules are that they have on them, right? Because if you hit print 2 or 3 times to the wrong device and you're getting a pop-up that you got to deal with, it's a pain in the neck, right? So what we can do, what you'll find, is that people will start printing down the hall because they don't have to get that pop-up, because they're not going to get any interruption whatsoever if they print correctly. It's only addressing the poor behavior. Now, we can also put that green spin on through these rules, right? So we can say this duplex rule. So if you're printing anything, and perhaps it's based on an application, perhaps it's just any printing, right? And you can give her a message that is going to, maybe appeal to her green nature, and say, look, we're going to save 20. If we can duplex 20% of our jobs, we're going to save 100 trees this year. Again, do you want to continue printing this job and killing the environment? Yes or no? There's another application of this that is quite appealing to a lot of IT people, and that's from the help desk communications perspective. So let's just say a network printer goes down. What that typically does is generates lots of calls to help desk saying, hey, this printer's down, can you come and fix it? Right? And after the first call, it's all redundant messaging, right? And people are going, yeah, we got it. I know, we'll get there. Don't worry. We know about it, right? The first time they hear about that with the PCS Director solution in place, what they'll be able to do is put a rule on it saying, essentially saying, if you're printing to this device, hey, it's out of service at the moment. We know about it. We'll get to it. We'll let you know when it's back up again. Really cuts down the aggravation and the call volume to the customer, to the help desk, and gives them a tool to manage their environment better. So there's also a document security aspect to this, because what we can do is we can put rules on particular documents. If your customer has sensitive documents, we can restrict or control who's printing it. When you have a document management system in place, you typically have control over, you got control of a document all the time. It's in digital format. But the moment somebody prints it, you lose control of it because you don't know who printed it, how many copies they did, or anything, right? With PCS Director in place, you're giving them a way to close that security loop. So let's say that Jennifer opens a document called the company financials doc, right? What we can do is put a rule on it if she tries to print it saying that, hey, you know what, this document's got confidential information on it. Are you sure you want to print it? Because we'll tell on you if you do. And, of course, here you can see that, no, yes or no. If she says no, whoops, I didn't mean to, well, no harm, no foul, right? The job gets canceled, nobody gets notified. But if she says, yes, I do want to do it, what it's going to do is going to automatically generate an email alert to Rent-A-Cop down here saying, hey, you know what, Jennifer just printed off the company financials, just thought you ought to know. That kind of thing, right? So, again, closing the loop for from a security perspective. Regulatory compliance. Again, if you're in large companies, this is something that they're going to be interested in. The regulatory compliance, the only time it becomes an issue is if you get audited. And if you get audited, you need the data. You need the data in order to prove compliance. Again, because we're closing that loop, who was it? Enron would probably have done quite well or to have this kind of thing in place, right? So, not always the biggest concern for customers, but maybe an added benefit. When we do these presentations for your customers, and in the short term, like I said, we'd encourage you guys to engage us to help you do them. What we would do is we would modify what we're showing them based on your knowledge of the customer, right? So that we're not just inundating them with, cost recovery if it's just not going to fly, or they've got no interest in regulatory compliance or security. They just want the rules, right? So we modify this. So on the cost recovery, it's very simple. We've talked about it a bit. User hits print. She's going to get a pop-up asking for a valid piece of information or pieces of information. They get recorded into a database, and then if they want to, they can integrate that information into their accounting system so they can automate the whole process of collecting the information, storing it, and generating an invoice. From there, that's when we would go into the return on investment myth sheet. I do it first. And you'll get the idea. Now, like I said, we're going to do role practices with you, and you develop your own style on this, but getting the transitions and everything is really the most important part of this. I'm just going to unmute everybody, and I'm going to throw this open to questions. Hang on a second. Where is the unmute? Okay, you are all unmuted. Are there any questions on any of this?
This is Matt Johnston.
Hey, Matt.
On the security end of it, since that's a big buzzword nowadays, how does the print director know the document is secure? Like you used the example of companies' financials.
Yes, it is by the document name. So you would need to, if there are documents that you want to secure, you would need to go into the administrative component of this software and say, I want to put a security alert on this particular document. Now, if the user goes and changes the name of the document, obviously that security alert won't be triggered. However, that's why you have document management systems in place, because that kind of activity, if they're changing names and resaving stuff, that activity is recorded by that kind of a system.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Well, you guys are easy on me.
Hey, that's what Joe Riddle thinks too. So I know James at the Taz's have worked with at least some of them have worked with the worksheet that you had there a little bit.
Yes.
Spreadsheet, and I love these slides. I know that you're going to send me a copy of these because I think using the approach that you're using has been very impactful, and it kind of walks the customer through it step by step to the point where they really do realize there's a tremendous savings that can be found here by using the PCS6 print director. Can I ask a question? And I know it's not about the presentation, but
Certainly.
what are the approaches that your people use when they call on a customer for the first time? What's the kind of a talk track that they might use? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
No, it's completely valid. It depends, of course, on the relationship, but as a general rule, the message should be something along the lines of, hey, it's been a while since we've spoken. I've been looking for ways to help save you money, and I've come across something that I think has got some real potential for you. It's called rules-based printing, and all of our customers that are adopting this are saving thousands of dollars a month. Would you be interested in learning a little more? I think it's as simple as that, because who's going to say no to that? And at that point, what you're saying is, well, let me set up a time where I can, this is in the short term, of course, until you guys are more and more comfortable about positioning this properly, let me set up a meeting and to do a web demo of this with our product expert. And we'll take you through it, and we'll show you what we think you might be able to do in your environment.
That's great, and I think too, when we do have those large accounts where it just would make so much sense to maybe engage your people on a web introduction like that. That would be most helpful.
It really does work. We do and this is a proven methodology for getting these appointments because we do what blitzes. So we will, with a dealer of ours, we will say to them, okay, look, here's your script, here's everything. Call your existing customer base, say this, and we'll come in and support you with the rest. Right?
That's great.
And when we do let's put it this way. I did a blitz. One of my reps, Como, did a blitz in Minnesota, and booked 51 appointments in 4 hours.
Wow, that's great.
It was a little overwhelming, to be perfectly honest. We were all very busy covering for her for the next couple of weeks. But, awesome. It generated a lot of business, a lot of pipeline, and eventually sales.
And I know you're working on providing us a list of your people who would be contact points for our TASs across the country. So
absolutely. In fact, I did send that list to you this morning, Steve. I don't know if you got it.
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't got to all my emails, so that would be great.
Fair enough. So, Any other questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, yeah, I was doing something of a blitz, well, not a blitz, but I was testing, sending out like emails to the, when I was on target, to either the IT or the finance director,
Yes.
based on kind of like your blitz, only like a little message with an attachment of PCS. And I got a few responses, and I got one appointment with the Veterans Administration Hospital in Boston.
Ah.
It's a big account, and
Yes.
so I'm going to probably ask for whoever the local person is for you guys up here.
In Boston, that will be Rob Ryder.
Okay.
And we also have some history with the VA down in Texas, so that might be something you might be able to leverage.
All right, because it's on the 20th of July.
What I'll do is sorry, what was your name?
Joe Arena up in New England.
I've heard your
Nobody's
name
been
before.
able to get in anywhere in the VA accounts, and I got in, so.
Excellent. Okay. Icon Boston. Okay. Yeah. What I'll do is, Joe, I'll have Rob Ryder give you a call.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
I do in the afternoon, and I'm on a call right now.
And we can hear you on your call. So, unless anybody has any other questions, I don't mind shutting things down 6 minutes early.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh, I had a quick question. Didn't think
Please.
it would work. Regarding the help desk pop-up,
Yes.
does the software recognize when that printer is down, or does IT have to go in and update the rules at that time?
Yes, they would have to update the rules. The thing is, and it's a good question, because what that implies is an automation of the rules, right? And automation of rules might be a good idea when it comes to that, but it's a poor idea when we're doing things like automatically redirecting volumes based on the user's, what the user's doing, right? Because if you start to put an automated rule saying that if you're printing here, we're going to send it down the hall, and then give them a message saying, "Hey, that's what we've done." You're taking, number one, the decision-making ability away from the user. And people don't like that. That's what we did a lot of focus groups and market research into this because that was the way we were going to do it. But we found out very quickly that this was not going to be an accepted methodology. So for that reason, there wouldn't be an automated message pop-up when a device goes down. So call is generated to the help desk saying, "Hey, we've got this printer's down." That help desk person either goes into the software and puts that rule in place, or they, shoot off an email to the whoever the IT guy is who is administering it.
Now, how long would it take for that to be implemented? Is it an immediate, or
Yes.
is it kind of like the log off and log on before that rule is?
No, it's immediate. It's real time. So it would, to put that rule in place would take maybe 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions? Excellent. Well, guys, once again, my name is James Hills. I'm going to make sure that I'm sending out the contact list from my guys. They will all be in contact with you.
Before you, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I do have one question. This is Ray.
Sure.
Listen, is there a way that in determining what devices we have out there, say parallel printers, is there a way that we can identify each printer and not each workstation? If you catch what I'm saying. So
absolutely.
Say you have 99 printers out there. Can I run a report to tell me how many printers, if there are 99 printers, or do I have to actually monitor each workstation to tell me?
Well, the way the software works is it is monitoring at the workstation level, right? We're a client-based software. So we are capturing the information on the workstation. However, from a reporting perspective, we're capturing those 35 pieces of information, right? So there's two reporting tools in the software. There's the template-based reporting tool, which gives you graphical representation of the data, and you just select which reports you want. Or if there's a report that you want to build, there's an ad hoc reporting tool in there so that you could do a report, for example, that says in column 1, I want the printers. In column 2, I want the volumes. In column 3, I want the costs or the users or whatever, who's using it. So the data is completely flexible, and the reporting tool is completely flexible in how you want to report on that.
Okay, now let me ask you, because the second example that you gave me, the ad hoc report that I can build, because now I want to discover all of the parallel printers
Yes.
that are sitting out there at this customer account, and say they have 500 printers.
Yes.
And say I want to run the assessor version of PCS.
Yeah.
Will that report allow me to see all of the parallel printers so I can find out what printers are out there?
Absolutely,
How many
yes.
In this particular case, the customer really doesn't know how many they have out there because it fluctuates.
Yeah, it's common.
Is it possible?
Absolutely. When you roll out the software in the environment, the moment that so that little client is sitting on that, it's under a 2 meg file that's sitting on the workstation, right? Once that's rolled out, once the user prints to a particular device once, we will know it's there, and it will be reported on. So as long as everybody has printed to their locally connected devices once after the software has been installed, you will see it all. That will also show you when new devices come on the scene, right? Because the moment they start printing to them, it's going to be automatically added to the inventory list.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Picks up both IP and MAC address at the same time.
I'm sorry?
So it'll pick up MAC addresses and IP addresses or whatever it happens to be.
It'll pick up the IP. It won't pick up the MAC, because you need to be because we're sitting on the workstation.
Yep.
We're not actually interacting with the device itself. We're getting the information from the print driver. So in order to get the MAC address of that particular device, we don't do that.
Okay. What if you have that copy client running? Does it pick up more stuff then?
That will do you mean the embedded software for the walk-up copies? Yes. Well, it's capturing the information then that is in the device itself, and that can vary depending on the device.
No, I was just curious if you had it embedded but not actually turned on, where you've got to log in just so you can, for reporting, and pick up other information on the machine.
Yes. No, it would not do that. It's capturing activity on that device.
All right.
Any other questions?
Thank you, James.
Yes.
James, appreciate your time today and yesterday and tomorrow. Giving you, you've done a great job. I appreciate all the help you and your team is offering for us, and I know that with your help, we'll be very successful at what we're going to be doing with PCS6.
I can't tell you how pumped I am about this relationship, because we have spent a lot of time trying to talk to our dealers in these terms. Right? Go to your existing customer base. Start moving the volume around in there, so many. Well, they're all focused on putting new hardware out there, and that's an admirable goal, and it's certainly one that can be helped by a rules-based printing, because you can create your own needs by moving volumes. But when you have the focus of generating more revenue out of your existing customer base, like you guys do, it is certainly the sweet spot. We're extremely optimistic about our relationship. So thank you guys for your focus. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to, through Steve, I will send out all of this information so that everybody has access to it. Call me or any of my team anytime, and we will help you out in any way we can. And thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you, James.
Bye-bye then.